The same media members who repeatedly clowned the Miami Hurricanes when they were down are now heaping praise on Miami since they're up. This is what Mario Cristobal refers to as ear pollution.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, if there is such a thing. I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and host of Postgame on the Hurricanes Radio Network. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. On this loaded episode, could there be a former Miami Hurricanes head coach or two being linked to the open Penn State job? Yeah, they canned James Franklin yesterday after 3 consecutive losses. We will take an early look at the matchup against the Louisville Cardinals coming up this weekend. Big opportunity for the Miami Hurricanes after the bye week. And we'll talk about Mario Cristobal trying to silence that praise that comes in for his team. All right, let's take a look at and let's listen to what Mario said this morning. He did his weekly radio spot today on the Joe Rose Show. He was asked about the Hurricanes, staying in the top 2 nationally. Miami's getting a lot. We talked about that praise last week. David Pollack and all these media members are telling Mario Cristobal, we think you guys have the best team in the country. Here's what Mario had to say on his weekly radio appearance this morning. Quote, "Those are the same people that raked us over the coals and ran us over with a truck over the past couple of years. So we don't care what they think," he said. "We have to get better. That is nothing but ear pollution. We have to understand and realize that we play some really good teams, especially this week. Miami has Louisville coming up on Friday night at home. This is as good of a team as we have played against. We have to work our butts off in preparation and go out and play our best football." Now, Louisville, like Miami, is coming off a bye week. So with all those college games that we watched over the weekend, including Florida State losing again, Florida losing to Texas A&M, Penn State losing their 3rd straight and firing their coach, we couldn't scout the Louisville Cardinals this past weekend because they're also coming off a bye. The last time they were on the field, though, the previous Saturday, they lost to Virginia in overtime. Virginia has done that a couple straight games now. So Louisville is coming off a loss. But Mario Cristobal, as he usually does, is heaping praise on the opponent, saying this is as good of a team as we faced all year. And, folks, there is no doubt Louisville has the talent, and we'll talk about it. There's been a few problematic issues for them, including inconsistent quarterback play, problematic offensive line play, but Louisville's defense is really, really, really good. And they also have an offense that, if they can find their form, has 2 of the most dangerous running backs in the ACC, a couple of the best wide receivers in the ACC who are putting up crazy numbers. They just need to find more consistency on offense, and we'll talk about all that. Here's Mario Cristobal this morning on the approach during Miami's bye week. Quote, "I was taught early on that the most important thing a coach can do is conduct an elite practice," he said. "That means that every drill and every phase and every technique and fundamental is applicable to every phase of the game. There are no wasted reps or wasted time and energy. Everybody has to really move fast," he says. "Your toughest game should be played on Tuesday and Wednesday so that on Saturday it all slows down." That's the old school mentality that Mario Cristobal came up in, right? Late 80s and early 90s, when he was on Miami teams that won 2 national championships while he was here in 89 and 91, you heard this repeatedly. Every Miami Hurricanes player you talk to from the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s says the same thing. Our toughest opponent was on Green Tree midweek. That was always tougher than the games on Saturdays. That's what Mario Cristobal is trying to create in the indoor practice facility and the Green Tree practice fields this week at Miami. And yeah, to the comment from Nicholas in the live chat, we're live, by the way, so smash the like button. One game at a time. Absolutely. That's why you're not, feeding into that ear pollution, as Mario Cristobal calls it. He continued about the bye week preparation. schematically, we stayed on edge as it relates to self-scouting so that you don't get pegged and tagged, he said. Right now, everyone knows what you have shown on tape through the first 5 or 6 weeks, and they are going to scheme you up. If they know what is coming, you can find yourself in a tough situation. So we try to stay ahead of all that. That's another reason why it's really valuable when it comes to teams having some tape on you and scheming up. Really valuable to have, a 6-year experienced starting quarterback like Carson Beck, who's seen everything and is really intelligent, really experienced, can adapt. I still feel like Miami's got a lot more meat on the bone when it comes to their playbook and what Shannon Dawson can run. I think they're going to continue to keep opposing defenses on their toes, and they're going to have to this week because Louisville has a really good defense. And then for Miami defensively, their pass rush, I think, can play a starring role in a potential victory this coming Friday against Louisville. But, in terms of the whole ear pollution quote from Mario, it's very much a variation on, his mentor, Nick Saban, when he used to talk the rat poison. And actually, Saban brought up the whole rat poison thing on College Game Day a couple times this year. That's when the media gets really high on you and you start to read your own headlines. You start to believe your own hype. That's the exact sort of hype that Mario Cristobal is going to try to keep out of his building. You put that bubble around Coral Gables, Florida, and you try to keep that media hype out of it. And he's right. Like, anybody who's been a long-time Miami Hurricane fan, you've covered this program, followed this program for a long time, you know that when Miami is down, as they've been so many times over the past 20-plus years, the vultures start to circle, and they start to pick at the bones, and they start to they create these narratives about, oh, Miami is all washed up. They're living in the past. These coaches can't finish. This team can't win the big one. And then as soon as Miami starts playing well, and we're only 5 games in, mind you, like we're less than halfway through the season. As soon as Miami starts to play well, you see this sort of stuff. As I pull up the Associated Press top 25, Miami in their bye week, they stay at number 2 nationally. Ohio State won again. They just beat Illinois over the weekend. So Ohio State, who's been number 1, defending national champs, they stay at number 1. We told you guys late last week that if Oregon had beaten Indiana, they didn't. But Oregon, who was ranked number 3, possibly could have moved back in front of Miami with the win. Since Oregon lost to Indiana, Oregon dropped to number 8. Indiana rose up to number 3 behind Miami. Texas A&M, they're playing well. They keep winning. They're at number 4. Ole Miss 5, Alabama back up to 6, Texas Tech, Oregon, Georgia, LSU round out the top 10. Other ACC schools that are in there, Georgia Tech coming in at number 12, Virginia at number 18. Another former Miami opponent, USF. Boy, USF looked really good against North Texas on Friday night. They're blowing out everybody, and they beat Florida, but they lost to Miami. So that win, Miami over USF, is looking better and better. Florida State, of course, dropped out of the top 25 because they lost their 3rd consecutive game. This time they lost to the Pitt Panthers. I made a lot of jokes on X about how Florida State's trying to intentionally hurt Miami's strength of schedule by losing. Miami also plays against Pittsburgh, who looks good, especially since making their quarterback change. So Pittsburgh, benched their former starting quarterback, Eli Holstein, who was really struggling. They put him on the bench, and true freshman Mason Henschel has been playing really well these last couple of weeks. But, you're certainly going up against a true freshman quarterback with a pass rush like Miami's. It gives you an opportunity coming up. But this whole ear poison thing, Cristobal is 100% right. And I take him very seriously when he talks about not, buying into our own hype in this Miami community, because keep in mind, last year, and I know this year's team is not last year's team, and I have many reasons why that is the case, but last year's team started out 9-0. At one point, they had like a 90+% chance, according to the odds makers, of making the college football playoff, and then they lose 2 of their last 3 regular season games, 3 of their last 4 overall, including the bowl game, but losing 2 of those last 3, they dropped out of playoff contention, essentially, and they dropped out of the ACC championship contention. So Cristobal's message is simple. We have 7 conference games left, right? You still have Louisville, who is going to be a tough game on Friday. You still have to play against SMU on the road, who's now 2-0 in the ACC. You have to play Pittsburgh on the road to end the season. Virginia Tech is not very good, but that can be a tricky road environment. You got to go out to Blacksburg second to last week of the year. You can't afford to slip up against a team like Stanford, who you should be able to beat easily in a couple of weeks, but you can't afford to take your foot off the gas. NC State is still on the schedule. That can be a tricky team. Their offense is really good. Their defense is really bad. South Florida native C.J. Bailey plays quarterback for the Wolfpack, so that's going to be an interesting homecoming for him. So, Mario understands that this team needs to continue to self-scout. They need to continue to practice hard. They need to continue to get better because, you don't have any hype men on the team like little Tommy Castellanos at Florida State who makes excuses after every loss. Oh, we beat ourselves. Nobody has stopped me yet. You have nobody in Miami's locker room with that mentality. Everyone is focused on the task at hand, and that is winning and going 1-0 every single freaking week. Now, how do you do that this week, you ask? Let's talk about it because there are, I think, some really compelling matchups, unit versus unit, player versus player between the Miami Hurricanes and the Louisville Cardinals. We're going to break it all down when we come back. And folks, I got nowhere to be. I got tired legs. I was just at Disney World for the past 3 days. Epcot really does stand for every person comes out tired. I got nowhere to be but right here in this chair talking Miami Hurricanes football with you guys on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. You want to keep it locked. Folks, this episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward is our own Carson Beck against Florida State. 4 touchdown passes, 0 interceptions, hit the big plays through the air. Carson Beck has got himself near the top of the Heisman Trophy race, and he keeps moving the game forward for the Miami Hurricanes. And when you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Our listener, Joey Kane, says, I just want to see 4 full quarters of what we know this team can do. I take it as a double-edged sword. The fact that, Miami hasn't played really. Maybe USF, you could say. There were maybe a couple drives that weren't like USF, I think, was the closest thing we've had to a full 4-quarter game this year. But in most of Miami's other wins, Bethune-Cookman you throw out of it, who cares? But Notre Dame, Florida, Florida State, in most of these games, Miami had lulls, right? Whether it be 4th quarter or really 3rd quarter against Florida, 4th quarter against Notre Dame, Miami has had some lulls. I think we know, like he was saying, what this team is capable of if they can just sustain it and show it to us for 4 quarters. If you can do what Miami's been doing for 3 quarters throughout their 5-0 start so far, you're going to really have me believing that this could be a national championship team. And obviously, most of America, even if Mario Cristobal warns of the ear pollution, most of America thinks Miami can be a national championship contending team. But I'm with Joey. I want to see it happen sustained through 4 quarters of action so far. All right, some notes on this upcoming game against Louisville. Hurricanes are favored by 12.5 points at home. That's a pretty big number. Now, Miami's been really good. Louisville has been pretty good, but they're coming off a loss to Virginia. Prior to that, they had a really close comeback win against Pittsburgh, who we find out is pretty good, although that was before Pittsburgh made the quarterback change. I actually think they made the quarterback change in that game, but they had Eli Holstein, who was struggling, start that game before Mason Henschel, their new starting quarterback, finished out that game. Before those 2 ACC games, Louisville played a bunch of cream puffs, so they've looked okay. They've looked good, not great. Miami's looked overall great so far. So the Hurricanes are 12.5 point favorites at home. That is a big number, so do with that what you will. Couple of questions on personnel that I think we all have coming out of the bye week. Is Jordan Lyle going to be a bigger part of the offense this week? He's been working his way back. He got 7 carries for 18 yards against FSU. FSU did a pretty good job overall against Miami's running game. They were clearly trying to take away the run and force Carson Beck to beat them, which he did. And Malachi Toney had a huge game against Florida State. But you remember Jordan Lyle, he started the season as Miami's starting running back against Notre Dame, got injured in that game, missed time due to injury. During his absence, Mark Fletcher has been one of the best in America. Marty Brown has been fantastic. So, Lyle is trying to carve out more carries. I think he'll probably be ready to get even more carries in this upcoming game. And, maybe the change of pace that he can provide with his speed and explosiveness, this could be a matchup where maybe that could come into play a little bit more. So you have to wonder, is Jordan Lyle going to get a bigger workload? But remember, if Lyle gets a bigger workload, he's taking carries away from somebody. And both Fletcher and Brown have been really good. So it's not easy to take carries away from these guys. Louisville has a good rushing defense, 31st ranked running defense in the country. They allow just over 111 yards per game. Miami averages 163.8 yards per game on the ground, so something's got to give. Miami was held to under 100 rushing yards against FSU, so they need to bounce back in that regard. In the passing game, again, I think we all wonder, is JoJo Trader going to play a role this week against the Cardinals? He missed some time this season. Mario Cristobal said a few weeks back that, Trader needs to pick it up in practice, coming off the injury that he had suffered from. JoJo Trader, I know people talk about him a lot. He's trying to earn his spot back after missing time because, again, you miss time, others step up. Malachi Toney has been one of the best receivers in the country as a true freshman. C.J. Daniels has been awesome. I think he's got 5 touchdown catches already this year. Keelan Marion has had some moments. Tony Johnson has had some moments. And so, JoJo Trader is trying to kind of work his way back into that wide receiver rotation. So you wonder if this extra week of practice, another bye week, if he's going to play a bigger part in the offense coming up. Louisville, by the way, I mentioned they're pretty good against the run. They're elite so far statistically at stopping the pass. Louisville ranks 8th nationally against the pass. They give up just 150 passing yards per game. And kind of like Miami, a lot of it for Louisville starts up front for them. Miami has maybe the best defensive line in the country. Louisville has one of the better defensive lines, one of the better ones in the ACC as well. And guys to watch out for on the edge, should be a great matchup for Miami's offensive tackles. Clev Lubin and A.J. Green are really talented defensive linemen for them, and they have helped Louisville rank 8th nationally against the pass. They've got some good cover corners as well. So, the good thing about Miami's offense is we've talked about all year. I call it the pick your poison offense. You try to take away the pass, they're going to maul you on the ground. You try to take away the running game, they're going to light you up through the air. So, Louisville has a pretty well-rounded defense, but we'll see if they key in on one aspect of it or the other. Louisville, by the way, is 12th nationally in total defense. They allow just 262 yards per game. But again, if there is an offensive line in America who matches up very well against their very good defensive line, Miami's got one of the top offensive lines in the country. So, keeping Carson Beck's jersey clean is something Miami's done very well this season, and they're going to try to do that again this year. Now, where you definitely see a mismatch, and this is the case in just about every game Miami plays in, certainly the case this week, Miami's pass rush has an opportunity this Friday night. Louisville, they've already surrendered 13 sacks this year. They rank 111th nationally in protecting their quarterback, Miller Moss. That's not good. So the Cards' offensive line has been a problem for them. Miami's defensive line could be a problem for them this Friday night. And despite having Louisville one of the more talented running back duos in the country, Isaac Brown and Duke Watson are both really good. Because their offensive line has struggled, Louisville is just 112th nationally in rushing at 115 yards per game. So they haven't really hit their stride. And so basically, a couple of the big runs that they've gotten, because again, their running backs are really talented. There have been a couple times when Isaac Brown has broken off a big run despite not having the blocking, just a big broken tackle and an explosive play. But, the way when we watch Miami run the football, usually, they don't get hit until they're a couple yards beyond the line of scrimmage. Usually Louisville, their running backs are getting hit a couple yards behind the line of scrimmage. So that's kind of been the difference with the push from the various offensive lines. The quarterback battle, always going to be interesting when you go up against a Jeff Brom coach team because he tends to be, they call him a quarterback whisperer, right? I would take Miami's quarterback, though, in this matchup. Carson Beck, 11 touchdown passes, just 3 interceptions. He's completing 73.5% of his throws for 1,213 yards. Miller Moss on the Louisville side, I would describe the Miller Moss experience so far as just a roller coaster of ups and downs for the Cardinals. 7 touchdown passes to 4 interceptions, including multiple pick sixes. I think he's thrown 2 pick sixes this year. Moss is completing 67% of his passes for 1,358 yards. So Beck has just been a lot steadier, a lot more consistent. Really, for Louisville, Miller Moss, sometimes he tries to do too much, but he's also really talented. The offensive line hasn't helped him out. But, yeah, and like Joe B points out, Moss can't handle our pressure. I mean, he hasn't handled pressure very well so far this season, and I think Miami's going to have pressure in his face all game long. When we come back, are there maybe more than one former Miami Hurricanes head coaches who are going to get linked to this Penn State head coaching job? Now, I think Penn State should be a destination job, and they should be shooting for the stars. But if they do have to settle, there could be some interesting options out there. And also, James Franklin getting canned. He's going to be losing a lot of his 2027 and 2026 recruits. Penn State will. They're going to have that 4-week transfer portal window opening up for their current players to get into. It's going to be pure chaos. How can Miami take advantage of that? And we have a few other notes to talk about for Miami's recruiting efforts during the bye week, because the bye week gives your coaches opportunities to go around the country and scout players in person for their high school games. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Folks, this episode is brought to you by Fanduel, and boy, did we have a fun weekend. I know Miami didn't play, but if you had Pittsburgh covering the spread or winning outright against Florida State, you had a nice weekend on the Fanduel app, which is always a great time. The NFL season is here, and Fanduel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Guys, I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. I've built parlays, I've tried player props, I've even followed the live lines during games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or you love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Folks, we're also proudly brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And if you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes to see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Monarch has helped me so much, guys, for the past several months. It puts all my info in one place. I realized how much I was overspending on things like food delivery and streaming services. So do not let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with our code LOCKEDONCollege. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. For your next listen, check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs and I will have a new episode later on tonight. Florida State loses again. It turns out, allegedly, a lot of those rumors about North Carolina and Bill Belichick last week were exaggerated, but there is a lot of damage control going on in Chapel Hill. How long is Bill Belichick going to be the head coach in that absolute dumpster fire that is North Carolina? We will talk about that and more later on tonight with Kenton Gibbs on a new episode of Locked On ACC, which, like Locked On Canes, is available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. So, all right, there are a couple of big programs out there who have lost 3 straight games. One of them are the Florida State Seminoles, who lost to Virginia, a few weeks ago on a Friday night. Lost to our Miami Hurricanes at Doak Campbell Stadium. Florida State just lost again to Pittsburgh at Doak this past weekend. Now, you're hearing a lot of FSU fans that if you go to their message boards, you listen to the FSU shows, they're trying to run Mike Norvell out of town. Not everybody, but a lot of their fans are getting upset. You know, the talent gap between Florida State and Miami is not where it should be in Mike Norvell's 6th year versus Mario Cristobal's 4th year, and they're on a bit of a spiral right now. So a lot of folks are questioning Mike Norvell's job, but Norvell probably makes it at least to the end of the year, and a big reason why is I was looking at the buyout number. It's going to cost them $58.7 million to buy out Mike Norvell. $58.7 million. Now, everyone's going crazy over the James Franklin buyout at Penn State, which was $50 million. $58.7 million to buy out Mike Norvell. Now, we know Florida State, they got a lot of boosters and stuff. If they're really, really motivated to do so, maybe they can raise that $58.7 million. But let's not forget, the Seminoles just spent millions of dollars on legal fees to sue the ACC. They spent millions of dollars to renovate Doak Campbell Stadium, which still has a lot of those uncomfortable bleachers. I'm not exactly sure what they spent that money on, but they've spent millions of dollars on other things recently. $58.7 million to fire their coach is a tall task, but Florida State job is still Mike Norvell's. I think he's doing a fantastic job, personally. Sorry, I can't say that with a straight face. But, you know, James Franklin was just canned by Penn State. And you would imagine Penn State, they're going to try to shoot for the stars here for their next head coach. And like a couple of the top names that are being linked to that job, Nebraska head coach Matt Rule, who's got Penn State ties, and Indiana's Curt Cignetti, who is, you know, doing an unfreaking believable job in Bloomington, Indiana. And, you know, that would obviously, Penn State could be an upgrade for him if he want. I mean, he's made Indiana a national championship contender. So does he want to leave there for Penn State? We would see, you know, you also hear a name like Bill O'Brien thrown in there, who's currently at Boston College. Obviously Bill has the Penn State ties. He took over after the Joe Paterno scandal, did a good job there for a couple of years, then went to the NFL, failed miserably. He's failing miserably at Boston College right now. He was a good coordinator, though, at times, but I think they could do better than Bill O'Brien. And another person who's got odds for that job is our old friend Manny Diaz. Manny Diaz has 10-1 odds to be the next Penn State head coach. And another guy with Penn State ties after, you know, having an unsuccessful run as head coach at Miami. He had a very successful run under James Franklin as his defensive coordinator for a couple of years. And Penn State's D, they were awesome during the Manny Diaz era. So they have high regard for him there. He's head coach now at Duke. So, you know, Penn State would be obviously a bigger football job. I still, you know, if I were the Nittany Lions, I would still buyer beware. Like, if you really want to, you want to fire James Franklin and pay him $50 million to replace him with a guy that might be James Franklin 2.0, because Manny Diaz just hasn't proven it as a head coach. So I would find that very odd if Diaz would get the job, especially a guy that was on Franklin's staff for a couple of years. It doesn't seem right. If I were Penn State, I would be very disappointed if we went through all this trouble to fire Franklin to bring in Manny Diaz. I don't think that's the move for them. I think it's got to be one of those first few names that I mentioned. Another name, and Lorenzo brings this up in the live chat. It's funny because I haven't seen Al Golden, who, of course, another very successful coordinator at the college level. Not so successful as Miami's head coach, but very successful coordinator. You know, had Notre Dame's defense absolutely humming for a couple of years. Golden is back in the NFL as Cincinnati's defensive coordinator, but we all knew this. Like, during the time that Golden was the head coach at Miami, we heard about this constantly. Penn State, where he played, is his dream job. Like, Penn State is Al Golden's dream job. So I would imagine that if Penn State would call Al Golden, he's probably calling them already, to be honest, that would be, you know, something that they might pursue as like a plan B, right? I think Curt Cignetti would probably be plan A, maybe Matt Rule. They probably give Urban Meyer a call because, I mean, why not? Like, I think that's a phone call you have to place no matter what. But I'm surprised I don't see Al Golden as anyone on the hot board in terms of like odds to be the next Penn State head coach. But I would imagine that that would be a dream job for him. Maybe Florida State and Penn State just swap. Maybe James Franklin to FSU, send Mike Norvell out there to Happy Valley. Man. Another guy who comes up in like the odds for Penn State is Lane Kiffin. Here's the thing though, like I think Lane values like his quality of life outside of coaching so much. I can't imagine Lane wanting to live in rural Happy Valley, Pennsylvania. I can't see that. I mean, if anything, I could see Lane, supposedly he almost did this last year. I could see Lane maybe to Florida or even Florida State, but I have a hard time seeing Lane Kiffin leaving Oxford, Mississippi to go to Happy Valley. I don't know if that would be in the cards for him. But, with James Franklin getting fired, anybody who's committed to Penn State is up for grabs now in terms of recruits. And PSU has actually just had their top 2027 commit just decommitted last night. 5-star running back Kimon Spell decommitted from the Nittany Lions, and the Miami Hurricanes are among his new top 8 since he's decommitted to Penn State. It's Miami along with Georgia, USC, Florida State, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Michigan, and Tennessee. Kimon Spell is the top running back in the class of 2027, 5-star player. Listen, if Miami could get in there and get this kid, that'd be a huge get. And, why wouldn't you want to play running back at Miami if you see the types of offensive lines you're going to be running behind? And I know a lot of the O-linemen who are on the team this year won't be here in 2027, but you're going to have a dude like Jackson Cantwell blocking for you, and we'll see who else Miami can bring in their upcoming recruiting classes. But the O-line should be set for a bright future even beyond this year. A couple of other recruiting notes. Gabby Urrutia at Inside the U wrote over the weekend that, Miami had a good weekend in the Atlanta area. Jason Taylor was out at high school games. On Thursday night, Jason Taylor was at Buford, Georgia, checking in on a pair of top targets in 5-star Texas A&M commit Bryce Perry Wright and edge rusher Dre Quinn. Now, Bryce Perry Wright, to my understanding, is number 1 on Miami's defensive line board in the class of 2026. Again, he is committed to Texas A&M. Texas A&M is obviously also having a really good season, so it's not as if they're struggling or anything. They're undefeated. They're in the top 4. But Miami is putting a lot of effort into the recruitment of Bryce Perry Wright, and they see him as like another Ruben Bain type. So I think that's the top defensive line target for them, but you would have to flip him to get him. According to Steven Wagner at Canesport.com, after Jason Taylor was in Atlanta on Thursday night, he went to Picayune, Mississippi on Friday to watch Alabama committed defensive lineman Nolan Wilson, another player Miami really likes, another possible flip target. So I know Hurricanes coaches, Jason Taylor included, but everybody else, like I think, Corey Heatherman was out around the country watching various linebackers during the bye week. Miami got the opportunity to go out there and check out some high school games. And a lot of the big-time recruiting targets for this class of 2026, a lot of the big-time remaining targets are possible flips. I guess you would still refer to, wide receiver Milan Paris, technically uncommitted now, but he was committed for a long time to Iowa State, recently decommitted, big target that Miami really likes. Calvin Russell is a player Miami is still possibly looking to flip, committed to Syracuse. I know we talked about this with Brian Smith last week, that like some Syracuse writer, because Calvin Russell put out like a couple of Instagram posts that like reaffirmed his commitment to Syracuse. Like, does that, I guess like he still holds Fran Brown and Syracuse to a high regard. He's committed there, but Miami is still putting in the effort to try to flip Russell, and we're about 2 months away from National Signing Day, so we have a long way to go. I appreciate you guys stepping in, making Locked On Canes your first listen today. We've been live for about the past 35 minutes, so make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to Locked On Canes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. Subscribe on YouTube. We're going to talk a lot more about the Louisville matchup for this week. It's a Friday night game at home. tough opponent, despite the fact that Miami is favored by 12.5 points. I know that's a big number, but I think Louisville's probably a little bit better than the odds makers are giving them credit for. We're expecting to do a crossover episode with Locked On Louisville later on this week. So, guys, stay tuned. We'll have a busy week here on Locked On Canes. Make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. And we'll talk to you next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.